All right, so notice that here the rendering of this content here is a little bit schizophrenic, right? So some of the content is being rendered outside of the component, right? And some of the content is being rendered inside of the component, right? Notice that it's being shared amongst this parent widget list component that is rendering. Let's see, it's rendering the title, right? It's rendering the ID. It's rendering the type. Okay, and maybe it makes sense, right? If you want to render the things that are in common with all widgets, right? Perhaps you want to do it out here, and then leave to render what's specific, right? The specific about a particular widget. Then leave these to handle all the things that are specific to that type of widget. Okay, so for instance, if you have a title widget, a heading widget, the heading widget maybe has a property of the size of the headings, right? So that's a property that's specific to that component. So maybe that should be handled in there. It should not be out here. Okay, so since title and IDs and widget type, those are common to all widgets, maybe that's a good design, right? To render everything that is in common out here, but then leave everything that's specific to each one of these. Make sense? All right. Okay. So, well, what about this drop down? Well, the drop down seems to be something that is specific to each widget, right? That I should be able to change from within the widget, right? So one of the things I like to be able to do is make those changes inside the widget and perhaps have a drop down per widget where I could on the fly change the type of a widget, right? As opposed to only at creation time. I can also change it later after it has been created, right? So to do that, what we could do is feed each one of these components the actual widget. You pass it as a reference to the component, right? So I can say, well, I'll pass it to you as an attribute, and here is your widget, which happens to be the widget that we're iterating, that we're mapping through, right? Right. So each one of these I could pass the actual widget instance into the widget component, right? So now I have a decision to make. So do I still want to do the titles and the IDs and the widget types out here? I have the choice to actually render it inside of these. I have a choice now, right? For instance, now that I could render the title here, or inside of each one of these, perhaps I could say, instead of widget type 1, I could render the title here, because presumably you just passed me the widget object as an attribute. You just pass it to me, right? And I have a reference to it right here. And I could say, I could render right here the widget, the title is right there. I have access to it. Okay, there it is. So notice that widget type 1 has received a reference to the widget, and notice that it's rendering the same title as the parent component is rendering. Obviously, it's the same object, right? But then I have a decision to make. Do I still want to render it out there in my parent, or do I render it here, right? And again, that's an architectural decision that you can make. Either one works. If it's something that is common, right, then perhaps it makes sense to leave it outside the parent, right? Instead of, because if you make a decision to do it only in the component, well, then you're going to have to, copy this content in every single component. Right? You're going to have repetition of code in different places. Is that a good idea? Well, again, it depends. Right? Maybe it is. Right? For instance, definitely the widget type I do want to replicate, because I know that I want each one to be able to change independently of the other. Right? So maybe that makes sense. Right? So let's take a look at that. Oops. All right, yeah, I forgot to add this widget. And to here. There we have. So notice that Now I'm rendering the title, right, in here. I can also render, obviously, the type is also available here, right? So widget.widget type. So I have access to the entire object in here. Make sense? Okay. All right, so since I have access to that object, including the type, I could have a drop-down here that manipulates that type, right, that changes that type. Right, so let's take a look at that, how we could do that. In widget 1, let's do it for widget 1 first. In widget 1, let's first add a wrapper around this so that down below here I can have a select. I'm going to copy that selects element that we did here in the parent. There's our select. I'm just going to copy that. I'm just going to plop it in here. There it is. We need the node, right? So this is going to be a local node variable, right? A widget type, and so I'll need the curly brackets for this to work, right? We're going to wrap this in render. I'm sorry, return. So with that, so widget 1, widget type. Okay, I don't have widget type, so let's declare that. So now I can do let widget type. Okay, so I have a drop-down. Notice that now widget type 1 has a drop-down. See that? Right? And each widget type could also have the same exact drop-down. But now I can change it. Right? I can change it. I have somebody listening to this. Right? Okay? So what I like to be able to do is, for instance, either I could have a button that says update or save, right? Or I could do an on change, right? If it changes, right, then I can do something. I can say on change. On change. Right, what could we do? What we could do is we could first make sure that the value of widget type has changed. So let's do a widget type dot value. Let's see. All right. So let's change it and select 3, and it says WT3. That's perfect. Or WT1. So we do have access to that element. Right. What we could do here is say that, hey, widget type, right, is equal to this widget type dot value. Okay, will that work? Okay, notice that it doesn't. Why doesn't it change? Right, remember, the only time that we actually re-render anything in the element, remember, these are all stateless. Right? It is not my responsibility, right, to maintain my state. Right? The only time that I will re-render, right, is that if the state has changed and somebody notifies me that I need to re-render. At no point am I generating any action that goes to any reducer that is changing the state. Okay? I need to change the state. The reducer needs to say, yes, a new state, there's a brand new state, because notice this, changing this is changing the state of the application. And the only one responsible for changing the state of the application is the reducer. Okay? It is not my responsibility to maintain any state. Well, actually I am, right? I am maintaining this little tiny state here in the component, right? But only insofar that I want to notify that something has happened, right? That I want to collect a couple of things, right? Maybe a title, maybe the type, and then it says, something has changed. I notify the reducer generates a new state, and then gets trickled down to me, right? All right, so let's see what we could do. So on change, really, I want to say update widget, right? I want to notify the reducer that something has happened. Okay, that for instance, the title has changed or the type has changed, something has changed. Okay. All right, so what do we want to do? What we want to do is perhaps send a JSON object that has the new changes, the new things that have changed. In this particular case, is the only thing that has changed is the widget type. Okay, so we're going to create a new widget with a new version of what the widget might look like. And I know it's going to have the same ID, so I'm not going to change the ID. So it's the current widget ID. And the thing that I'm changing is the widget type will be the widget type value. Okay? So that's going to be my new version. My title hasn't changed. The widget type, only the widget type has changed. Right. We could have the title here too. Right? We could bring that input field that is way out there. We could bring it inside of the component so we can edit individual titles, right, of each widget independently. Yes, right. We could do that. But let's focus on the widget type. Let's focus on the widget type. So we're going to call update widget, and we're going to pass in the brand new widget. Okay? All right, update widget. All right, so that has to go to the container. Right? The container is going to map that. Right? It's going to be here a update widget. And it's going to dispatch. It's going to dispatch the type will be update widget. Right? And here's the widget. These are with the new values of the widget. Everybody okay? All right. Awesome. So that means that the container, the reducer is going to receive this brand new element, right, a brand new action, and we have to handle it. So this will be case update widget. Okay? This new update widget. And we need to do something similar to this filter, meaning we're gonna return all the objects, all the widgets that are not the ID that we're changing. Right? We're gonna return it as is. We're not gonna touch the original widgets. Okay? All the other widgets. We only want to modify that widget that has indeed changed. Right? We want to modify it. Yes? Okay. All right. So how do we do that? All right, so we're going to return. We're going to return the same object with widgets. And what we're going to do is that we're going to map over all the existing widgets. Right? If it's not the ID that it's being modified, then we're going to leave it alone. We're just going to return the original widget. Right? But if it's the widget that is being modified, we're going to replace a couple of things. We're going to do some surgery. We're going to say state.widgets map. Remember what map does, right? Map concatenates what you return, right? In this case, it's the array. So this returns the widget object. Okay. So if the widget ID that you're looking at, right, as I am iterating, if this is equal to the action, right? The action has the widget, the brand new widget with the change. Yes. Action dot widget dot ID. If these two match, right, then I need to do some surgery. Right. Else, if it's not, then I'm just going to return the original widget. I'm just going to return the widget. Otherwise, right, if it's the one that we're not touching, it's going to go verbatim the original widget. Otherwise, we are going to do some changes. We're going to do, for instance, the only thing that we're changing right now is what? The type, right? That's the only thing that we're changing, the type. We're going to say that widget dot type, no, widget type, right? Widget type is going to be equal to the action dot widget type, widget type, right? And then we're going to return, and then we're going to return the widget. We might need to copy the widget, though. Let's see. All right, so let's try it out. Widget type 1, widget type 2, and it died. Oh, no. Let widget, widget ID. What is it? Cannot read property ID, widget. No? Don't we have that in the widget component? Let's see. No, that's happening where? Here, right? That's in widget type 1. Widget. Widget type 1. We don't have an ID here? How we do not have an ID here?
What's the default state that you have? I think in your default state you have IDs.
Let's see. Let's go into the reducer. So we have IDs. We have IDs. Let's step through this. Let's see. Let's go to source, and let's take a look at this. Node modules, source. We can go into the containers, and we go into widgets. We can look at the widget type 1. And there's our problem. Let's see, on change. And let widget, probably because I'm redeclaring widget. So it's I'm rewriting over a variable that already exists. So let's try changing using another name. So let's, so widget title, so I'll say maybe W. How's that? Just W. And use W here. Let's try that. Type 2. Oops, we get another error. Let's see. Is this the same error? Type is not a update widget is not a function. No. Update widget. Update widget. Okay, so it's okay with this now. But update widget is not a function. Did I misspell it in the container? Update widget, no. Okay, update widget. Probably because the component is being fed. Right, the update is here, right? The update widget is way up here. And the parent component is receiving all these things, right? The parent component is receiving all those things. Let's sand it over down to widget type 1. Let's sand it over. Update widget is equal to the reference of update widget. Okay, let's try that. This is a little bit too big. Widget type 2. Oops. Oh, wait, did it work? All right, if I change it to type 2, notice that it changes to type 2, but type 2 doesn't have a drop-down, right? So I can't go back to the original type. So let's add the same drop-down, right? Let's add the same exact drop-down, but to widget type number 2, right? So we can change back to the original one, right? So let's and also, let's feed all these update widgets down to all the types of widgets. So let's go back to type widget 1. Let's copy this drop-down, Actually, let me copy everything. It's almost identical, right? Let me grab that, right, and go to widget type 2. Where are you? Widget type 2 right here. And I'll just copy it in here. And we'll probably need, we need the curly brackets too. Right, let's copy the curly brackets, paste it right there. But we'll call maybe type 2 over here. Okay? All right, so now we should be able to go back and forth between widget type 1 and widget type 2. So let's try that again. Widget, we'll need update widget here as an argument, as a parameter. Okay, all right, let's see that. Now if we can go widget type 1, widget type 2. Notice that it changes. Notice that it's the same ID, the same title. The title hasn't changed. Or the title hasn't changed. Only the type is changing, right? Only the type is changing. Right, but the same values is between the two. Make sense? Right? Obviously, if this was a heading, it might have its own drop down for the size of the heading. It would have its own input field for the title for the heading. For the list widget, it would have a text area where you can type all the line items for each one of the items in the list and whatnot, right? And we will do that next.